to make sure that they're safe. And so you need a safe environment. When I mentioned wearing your own clothes, that's part of it, right? Feeling yourself, right? If you are somebody like for me, keeping my nose ring in during my whole labor was important to me, wearing my jewelry, wearing my own clothes. Um, Having creature comforts around you, like the smell of home in a blanket or your own pillow, the lights being kept low. And when I talked about our OBGYN coming and doing a delivery and saying they were like a midwife, and what that meant is that the lights were low and they used soft voices, right? That's usually what women need when they're in labor. When they get to more advanced labor and they start to kind of lash out, we reassure partners that that's a really good thing. So we'll go through the stages of labor, but there's your anatomy on the inside. And then externally, this is your amazing anatomy. That is the door for baby to come out, right? So we talk a lot about the cervix dilating and being gone or 10 centimeters, but look at the vaginal opening. That also has to allow for a baby to pass through there. So that happens in a lot less time. Your cervical dilation, right? We talked about the 24 hours, right? But when you're pushing, it's going to be probably maximum of 4 hours and that baby being at the door of the vagina is even less than that. So there is some perineal massage that you can do. There's a device called the Epino, and we'll talk about that, just to help stretch that area to allow for baby to emerge and less tears. You have your clitoris that's up at the very top, and the clitoris has just finally been mapped in the year 2005, and that runs pretty much along the anterior wall inside the vagina. Below the clitoris is the urethra. The thinner lips are the labia minora, and then the lips that have the hair on them are the labia majora, or the larger labia. There is no recommendation for pubic hair in labor, so please, whatever you're doing is fine. There is no medical reason to shave or to wax. That is not anything that you're doing for us. So again, pubic hair fashion is up to you. But if you are somebody who gets irritated, then definitely don't worry about waxing or shaving or doing hair removal of any sort, okay? It's natural to have hair in the pubic area. So your uterus is inside, the vagina is the opening outside, your urethra is the opening for your bladder, and then obviously your breasts are involved also. So looking at those images, you can imagine why there are pregnancy discomforts. So as your body changes in weight, your breasts get larger, you start to feel tired, you get that carpal tunnel feeling, that numbness or weakness in your hands, just as you expand and make more fluid in your body. You actually double the amount of blood that you have in your body when you're pregnant. It is amazing. You might have heartburn, right? Think back to that picture and the baby being right underneath your rib cage and right up against your tummy. Hemorrhoids as babies pressing onto the rectum. Hemorrhoids are varicose veins in the rectal area. Sometimes they can be painful, swollen, sometimes they can bleed or hurt or itch. So please don't feel embarrassed. If you do have some hemorrhoids, come in and talk to us about that, okay? They're common in pregnancy. A belly band can usually help with that. You also might get leg cramps. That's a sign that you might need more magnesium. I think the common wives' tale is eat more bananas, right? But the leg cramps can be really impressive. And if it's red or tender, after the cramp goes away, you definitely want us to have a look at that and make sure it's not a blood clot. But the leg cramps, the best thing is to just get your toes towards your nose, have somebody rub it, and then add some extra magnesium. Those lovely nighttime supplements like the Calm Those are good. That have the magnesium, the little drinks that you can make. And then morning sickness, as most of you know, it's not just morning, it's all day sickness. And for some, it lasts all the way through pregnancy. So all those discomforts, you might be short of breath. Your pelvis might ache. I mean, I put the picture back in there because you can imagine why your hips start to hurt, right? Everything's opening to allow for baby to drop into your pelvis, which leads to sleep problems, stretch marks, itchiness of the skin, frequent urination. Look at baby on your bladder. Varicose veins in the legs, not just the rectum, the hemorrhoids, and then Braxton Hicks contractions. So Braxton Hicks contractions are a tightening of the uterus. Some people describe it as I could see how the baby was laying in there, right? Because the uterus is just all constricted onto itself. And so the difference between a Braxton Hicks is that they kind of hold on for a lot longer, so maybe 2 minutes. And it's an external feeling. Generally, you're not going to feel it inside. It's going to be tight on your tummy. Braxton Hicks contractions, I think, are a guide for you. And when I say tuning into your body, the Braxton Hicks contraction gets you to tune into your body, because most of the time when it's balled up like that, it does make you stop and then go through the little checklist. Do you need to go pee? Is your bladder too full? Because just like when your bladder floats, right, it'll irritate, if it's really full, irritate the uterus and cause it to constrict. Or is your bladder empty and you need to drink a lot more water, so a little dehydrated can also give you that Braxton Hicks contraction. Do you need to eat something? Are you hungry? Did you just eat something and you're really, really full? Have you been sitting down and lethargic for a while? Do you need to get up and move? Or have you been too busy and now you need to rest, right? So go through that little checklist for your body. And then if there's nothing that you can really tune into that your body needs, then it's just a Braxton Hicks contraction. If it was a more preterm labor contraction, it's going to feel more like a menstrual cramp and really hurt a little bit more. So the hormones that are involved, you've got your dopamine, your endorphins, serotonin, and oxytocin. So the dopamine is your reward center. The endorphins are the ones that help with pain. And serotonin, your mood feels better, right? And the oxytocin is that love hormone. So when you're packing, some of the things that I showed you in this room, bringing your own snacks, right? Getting in the bath or the shower, exercising, so getting up and moving, dancing, playing your music, laughing, those things can help you cope with the labor a little bit more. And then with the oxytocin, if you watch the video, the animated video that I put in the chat or that Sunny did, you'll see oxytocin is these pink waves coming out of the woman, and you'll see them kind of increase with touch when she's in a very safe, dark spot. When there's music playing, you'll see the waves of the oxytocin going more. And then, of course, when the baby latches to the breast, that oxytocin is released as well. And then the serotonin, so just nature. So our hospital windows don't open, but most of our rooms have beautiful views. So spending some time looking outside or bringing in your laptop so you can kind of play beautiful images of places that you've been. So exercise and healthy eating are going to help you have an easier birth, right? You would never sign up for the marathon, put on 70 pounds, and then try to run it. And it's not preparation for, the birth that's going to be your recovery postpartum. The recovery is from being pregnant too. So it really does matter what you do now in your pregnancy. So moderate exercise helps you feel your best, right? Check with your practitioner if you're going to start something new. So most of the time, swimming, walking, those are going to be fine. You avoid getting dehydrated, so drink extra water. That liquid IV that I showed you, those packets, whatever exercise you choose, don't overdo it. So if you're walking with a girlfriend, you should be able to keep a conversation going. It shouldn't be, gasping for air. Swimming, stretching, yoga, prenatal yoga, low impact dance or aerobics, those are all really good things. And then Kegel exercises. I have a separate slide for that. That's where you pull your pelvic muscle in and hold and then release. And it can be done anytime, any place. No one can tell when you're doing a Kegel exercise. And the more you practice now, the easier after those muscles have been through a birth, it'll be to get those muscles back in shape. And while you're breastfeeding is a wonderful time to do a Kegel exercise. So at postpartum, you're going to start exercising 6 to 8 weeks after baby. So that's just to allow your body to recover from the pregnancy too, right? And then your goal will be to lose the pregnancy weight. So important, because if you start your next pregnancy 10 pounds overweight and then gain, and then the next one 20 pounds overweight and then gain, you can see how we set ourselves up for more complicated pregnancies, but also harder to recover and harder to birth. And then again, this spinningbabies.com, make sure you check that out. So Kegel exercise is moving the vaginal pelvic floor. So you're trying to isolate these muscles that are right under the urethra and just above the rectum. Sometimes the perineum will actually move. So during pregnancy and delivery, as the pelvic floor becomes stretched and weakened, it can cause urine to not be as well controlled afterwards for months or years after childbirth. So getting your core to your tummy muscles back in shape is important also on your bladder. And start doing exercises, Kegel exercise during pregnancy, and then continue them after with baby. So the perineal massage is usually, if it's on yourself, to the thumbs, both of your thumbs, pressure down towards your rectum, and then a little bit to that 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock, like the the clitoris is at 12, right? The 4 and the 8 kind of down and out. And just like any yoga pose, you'll feel a stretch and maybe a little burn, and just breathe into it and see if you can stretch a little farther. It should not cause you pain, okay? The device called EpiNo is a little dilation device that you pump some air into it and it'll dilate if you're not comfortable. And I get it, it's hard to do when you got a belly in front of you too. But that is not on Amazon. You have to get it from their website. It's Germany has had the dilation devices available for a long time, and now they're available for us. So nutrition, it does matter. What you eat now is going to influence the amount of weight that you gain, the nutrition that the baby's getting, and babies learning different tastes already because they're swallowing the amniotic fluid, and that's influenced by what you're eating. And so, if you think about that with different cultures, how babies in India are habituated more towards the curries, right? Or if you're in China, different sauces and things and spice levels. And that's why, because that amniotic fluid is really influenced. And so if you are high fat diet, the pizzas and maybe takeaway burgers or French fries, that amniotic fluid is going to have those tastes. But if you're doing lots of fresh fruits and vegetables that are well washed, you're going to habituate your baby for that. And you're actually going to feel better too. So that is one of the best things you can do, is just the nutrition for you and your baby. You only need 200 extra calories a day for pregnancy. When you are breastfeeding, you actually need 500, so it's a lot. So 200 calories is like a cup of yogurt or a banana and peanut butter, maybe some hummus and some carrots. So it's not actually a lot. And some people actually, if you start off a little higher BMI and you actually change the way you eat, more fresh products, you may end up losing some weight just from how you've changed. So pregnancy is not a time to diet. but it is a time to change how we eat and to make that goal for really healthy foods. Colorful plate, so eat the rainbow. Make sure you've got some protein, meat, eggs, dairy, tofu, beans. Veggies and fruit should be half of your plate, and then the carbohydrates should be the smallest. So that's your rice, your pastas. So we'll talk a little bit about fetal movement. So how active is your baby? Most of you are more than 28 weeks, so you can do active counting of baby if you need some reassurance. So babies will sleep about 20 to 45 minutes, so just be aware of that. And movements are going to change as the baby gets bigger. So for me, I remember that it felt like a fish in my bladder early on, and then it was like popcorn, and then toward the end, it was just these rolls and waves. Keep in mind, I had two in there, right? So I could feel the distinguished difference between the two of them and how they were moving. So tuning into your baby's movement also is going to give you a little insight into their little personalities, right? So at 28 weeks, third trimester, the movement becomes more like a pattern and more regular. So if baby's got a particular time during the day that they're really busy and they're not giving you that, you may want to just check in and do a fetal movement count. Counting all movements, so turns, hiccups, twists, jabs, rolls, those all count. So sometimes you'll hear it kick counts, but it's actually all movement counts, even hiccups, right? When the baby gets those little jumpy hiccups. Active baby is one that we're actually not worried about. So some people say, oh, I'm worried he moves too much or she moves too much. Generally, we're not worried if they're moving a lot. So to be able to count, what you need to do is have an empty bladder and lie on your side. Left side is usually the best, and look at the clock and write down the time and pay attention to your baby's movements, any movement that you feel. And you could just do like a little tick mark or something. When you've counted to 10 movements, look at the clock. And baby should be about 4 times in an hour or 10 times in a 2-hour period. So if baby's moving less, call labor and delivery, and you're after the 28-week mark, 432-8552. That is a number that's 24/7. And anytime you're concerned, so are we. So please don't feel that you're bothering us if you call that number. Okay, so warning signs. Preterm labor is less than 37 weeks of labor. If you're at that 36-week mark, though, we're not going to stop labor, but we're also not going to encourage it. If you come in and maybe your cervix is making some change, we're not going to increase. The last couple of weeks, baby's learning to actually breathe. They do these little practice breathing, and their lungs are maturing, and they're learning to suck too. So babies born that 39 to 40 weeks, they actually breastfeed a lot better too. So again, any of these things you're going to call labor and delivery. So vaginal bleeding. So it is normal to have like a little browny mucousy discharge maybe after intercourse, or when you're at that 36-week mark as the matrix of your cervix starts to kind of break apart. You might have some brownish discharge, but if it's bright red like a period, you need to call us. If you end up with a fever that's 100.4, definitely call for that. Take some Tylenol. That's where we'd probably want you to come in and be tested for flu or RSV. Whenever you have a fever, your heart rate goes up, so babies can increase too. If you've got pain or burning with urination, like a bladder infection, we'd want to know about that. If you have sudden swelling of your hands and face, problems with your vision, recurrent headaches, especially after 28 weeks, that's preeclampsia signs. And so we really want to look at that. That is a illness in pregnancy that we don't know why it happens, but women can get quite sick, and it can lead to seizures of the mother. So that's why we see you more often after 28 weeks. We're seeing you every 2 weeks to make sure your blood pressure is okay, check on your swelling, and ask about headaches or just anything else that you're noticing. vomiting and diarrhea. If you can't keep anything in, you'd probably want to call us to get some IV therapy and again, check for flu. Major changes in your baby's movement, as we discussed, and anything that doesn't feel right, we're here for you, right? So preterm labor can be pretty vague. It might be like we talked about menstrual cramps when we talked about the Braxton Hicks. So Braxton Hicks is just a kind of external tightening. If you're getting menstrual-like cramps or a low backache, if you're somebody who gets your period signs in your back, that would be something to let us know about, especially if it's coming and going. So if you've got every 10 minutes or less than 60 minutes, we'd want to know about that. If you've got a low, dull backache or maybe some pelvic pressure or pain, sometimes when women are going into labor, they'll clean out their bowels. If you've got an increase to your vaginal discharge, mucusy is normal. That cervical mucus can look like meat fat. It can be impressive, but if there's just a shift and you're still earlier than 37 weeks, I'd want to know about that. Or if your bag of water opens. So generally that's a big gush, or it will have a very different smell than urine if you're noticing your undies are very wet. Put them, if you are coming in to see us and you've had a big gush, put either your undies or your pad in a Ziploc bag. We do want to see that, so bring it in. Okay, here we are, an hour and 15 minutes into this, and we're talking about labor, finally, right? All of that other stuff, though, is so important to know about your body. So labor, regular contractions that cause cervical change, and contractions help your cervix to thin out, dilate, open up to 10 centimeters. So the average length of first stage of labor is 12 to 13 hours for your first baby and shorter for your second baby. And the stages of labor has 3 parts. And since we're all adult learners, I'm going to go through this in a lot of different ways. So don't feel, if you're taking notes, that you have to just write everything down now. We're going to go through it in a lot of different ways. So early labor takes the longest. It's usually 2/3 of the total labor time. Usually you can maintain moderate activity, you're excited. Active labor contractions are increasingly consuming and challenging. I like that description, which means you usually can't walk or talk through them anymore, and your cervix dilates to that 6 to 8 centimeters. Transition is the horrible, nasty bit, the most uncomfortable and intense part of labor. The cervix is opening to its fullest, so 8 to 10 centimeters. So once again, we're going to go through those in many different forms. So here's the table form. So we have the stages of labor, what the cervix is doing, contractions, what your emotions might be, and the timing. Okay, so first stage, early labor, the cervix is dilating 0 to 6 centimeters. The contractions are usually irregular and mild, and you might be really excited. Hey, I'm having contractions, because you're at that finish line and you're ready to have a baby, right? You might be talking and exciting, and we really don't know how long that takes. So historically, we used to start labor at 3 centimeters. That was based on some research that was done in the 1950s. And thank goodness, when they started to look at the rising cesarean rates around the world, they realized that 6 centimeters was a better active start to labor than 3. So now it's 6 centimeters. So first stage of active labor, your cervix is going to go from 6 to 8 centimeters. The contractions now are really, they're regular. It's almost like our bodies have a clock. It's so incredible. So they're every 2 to 5 minutes. And now you're going to be more serious and real quiet with the contractions. You still might be able to listen, but you usually won't answer until after the contraction's done. And that's going to be about 8 to 10 hours. So now we're getting into that 24-hour time, right? Transition from 8 to 10 centimeters, regular, every 2 to 3 minutes with your contractions. And this is when people are in the zone. And in our videos, you're going to see when people hit this spot. I have a couple of videos that are unmedicated mamas and some that have some medication. This is where things are just washing over your body. It's usually the shortest. If you are unmedicated, it's 2 to 4 hours. Everything can be a little longer with the epidural when we kind of relax you a lot, but it still can stick. Sometimes things speed up, sometimes they slow down. Pushing is when your cervix is 10 centimeters, and that's with crowning and your vagina is opening up too, right? Contractions space out a little bit if you are unmedicated and not being induced. You have a natural pause, and that's because now you're doing something very active and physical, and then you're usually concentrating and you're actively involved in this part. So you can push from anywhere from 1 to 5 hours. Our videos tonight are really sweet. These first time mamas are like 15 or 20 minutes, but just keep in mind that it could be a couple hours of pushing. And then the third stage is what is considered the delivery of the placenta. So that is where we are controlling bleeding and we're doing your repair. Your uterus is still going to have contractions to get the uterus to shrink down. The emotions are usually joy, celebration. That first video that we watched with the time lapse, did you see just that? Like she almost looked naturally drugged, right? Her face, so there's just this relief and this incredible like joy and awe about what just happened. And generally it's going to be 20 to 60 minutes after birth. So now for adult learners, I'm going to go through these and give you signs. I'm going to role act about what stages would sound like, okay? And I'll start the role playing. We're going to pretend that I'm calling in to talk to a nurse about should I come in or not, okay? So first stage, early labor, the woman calls. And maybe Sunny's going to be our nurse that answers, right? So Sunny says, labor and delivery. This is Sunny. Hi, Sunny, this is Jen, and I'm having some contractions. They started about an hour ago, and oh my gosh, there's one. Oh, they just keep coming. It's right now. My tummy's so tight. What do you think? Should I make my way back in? And Sunny says, has your water broken? And the woman says, no. I haven't seen anything like that. Is the baby moving? Oh yeah, baby's moving a lot. In fact, I can feel baby right now, even during that contraction. And then Sunny's probably going to tell the woman to take a little bit of time, right? I don't think it's time right now. Drink some water, try to rest, or maybe get up and go for a walk, and just try to ignore it as much as you can, okay? So active labor, so same person's going to call. Labor and delivery, this is Sunny. Hi, Sunny. This is Jen again. I'm calling. I know it's been about 12 hours since I talked to you last, but hold on. Oh. 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 Oh, sorry. I just can't talk through them anymore. And you know what Sunny's going to say? Jen, why don't you come on in? That sounds like you're in active labor. Let's have you come in so we can check your cervix. Okay? So that, if you're wondering, how do we know when to get people here? It's for things like that. So transition is going to be a little bit more intense. And generally what's going to happen is Sunny's going to answer the phone. Hello, this is Sunny. Sunny, this is Bob. I'm Jen's partner. And can you hear her in the background? Oh, oh. And Sunny's going to say, well, yes, Bob, I can hear. That sounds really intense. And she won't even talk to me out. I don't know what to do. She won't talk to me even in between. She's just quiet and closing her eyes. She's probably transitioning. So bring her in, Bob. Bring her in right away. Park at the roundabout, and if you need to, we can come down and meet you. Okay, so just as a side note, the roundabout in front of the hospital has 2 spots that are stork parking. So if you're transitioning and your partner's making that loud sound and quiet in between and can't talk to you, get her a wheelchair to get her upstairs. Okay, that's usually the time that you'll need. Pushing, you're already here, so no more calling Sunny on the phone. If you're pushing on the phone, we're gonna have you call an ambulance. But pushing has a very distinct sound too. So then there's that deep moan, oh, oh, and then it becomes a grunt. Uh-oh, I got coffee on that one. So it's going to be an actual, you're going to hear the push. And again, that's when you're unmedicated, okay? You're going to be actively involved in that and concentrating. And you might be really just so excited that you're no longer so passive, right? And then third stage, the excitement is what goes. That's the sounds that are made during that time. And sometimes just quietly smelling baby, counting fingers, looking at ears, and establishing breastfeeding. So there we go. And we're going to still look at pictures now of early, active, and transition. So this is looking at the cervix, right? So the cervix, you can see the pelvis, and you can see the cervix. So everybody does a thumbs up right now. Just put your thumb up in front of you. So that is a long cervix. Your thumb is long. And now if you extend your hand open, so there's that 90-degree angle between your thumb and your pointer finger. Look at the skin in between your thumb and your pointer finger. That is effaced. So if your cervix is the size of a thumb, we say 0 effaced, probably going to be really firm, like in the picture on the far left. And then when it thins out, like in transition, the picture on the far right, you can see it's almost like just that little layer of skin, right? So that's what the cervix is looking with when it's changing the effacement. And you can see that it's opening up too. And baby's moving lower into the pelvis. So here's dilation. So I love it. It looks like a donut, doesn't it, on the left side, the undilated cervix. So it just feels like a little dimple in there. So if you purse your lips together, you know that when your mouth is closed and you're a kissy face, your cervix is, that's what it feels like, but a little firmer. And then when it dilates, we don't feel it anymore. We say 10 centimeters, but it's actually, we can't feel it anymore. And this is station. So when I said baby was moving lower into the pelvis, if you, everybody right now, sit on your hands, maybe palms up so you can feel better. When you sit on your hands and you wiggle back side to side, you can feel your sits bones. And that's the smallest part for baby to come through in your pelvis. And so, you know, there's different, like if you open your knees or close your knees, you can feel those bones kind of moving in and out. And that station is getting baby to drop into your pelvis. So sometimes you need to open the top of your pelvis, and sometimes you need to open the bottom of your pelvis. So when you're sitting on your hands, you can feel those bones moving. And then effacement, again, not effaced, long cervix, effaced, the very thin. And then this is the actual birth of the baby from the side view. So there's the picture of that extension, right? Baby's head has to stay tucked, come under the bone, and then they have to extend their head to come on out. And then they twist and their little shoulders come around underneath the bone too. And then baby goes right on your tummy for skin to skin. And then the placenta comes out. So delivering the placenta, you do usually have to push just a little bit. And then after the placenta comes out, you can see that there's a considerable area that is like a little suction cup, right, on the lining of the uterus. And so the uterus needs to put pressure on itself so that all those little blood vessels that were right there at the surface, you can control the bleeding that way. And then you start to shed the really healthy lining of your uterus. So sometimes you can have practice labor. In some references, you'll see it called false labor. But again, for me, language is really important in how we talk to our families and the pregnant person. And when you say false labor, it sounds like a lie, right? But it's actually not false labor, but it's practice labor, right? And then there's the real labor. So in practice labor, the contractions are usually irregular and they don't get closer together. So like in the first scenario between Sunny and Jen on the telephone, if Jen went to lay down, they might go away. Or she went for a walk, they might just kind of stay the same. But in true labor, they're going to get more intense, and they're going to progress and get closer together. When you move, they might stop and practice labor, where in true labor, they just keep going, which is what you want, right? You got to have all those positive affirmations for yourself. Yes, I want this. And then the strength of them, usually with practice labor. So you can have practice labor if you've had intercourse, because remember, an orgasm is a spasm of your uterus, and your uterus now is nice and big and out of your pelvis. And so you may get some irregular contractions after you have sex, which would be practice labor. So how strong they are is going to tell you, oh, this is just my uterus practicing. And then you do the same checklist like you do with Braxton Hicks. Drink some water, lay down, get up and walk, see what helps. Have a snack. If it's true labor, they're going to be strong and they're going to continue to get stronger. So to the point where you can't walk or talk through them. And then feeling the pain sensation, generally with practice labor, it's going to be just kind of toward the front, where true labor, you just get this big squeeze. So labor tips as we watch some of the videos tonight, just watching for the environment, watching how they breathe. You'll see some imagery and visualization. You'll watch them use water, so either the tub or the shower. Again, we have 2 labor tubs that are available to you, and we're using water for labor, but not water birth, so not having the babies in the water. You'll want to keep active. Warm or cool compresses and gentle touch or massage. We talked about the tennis ball, and generally approaching the massage with caring and understanding approach, right? During a contraction, it might feel better to just have pressure, and then the massage can be in between, and we'll work with you and your support people. And you can watch in the videos. Music, I think, is so powerful because it's also a distractor, and it can trigger memories from other times in your life. Aromatherapy, or the smell of home from a blanket or a pillow, and then again, wearing your own clothes. So this is Ty's birth. So watch this birth. You will see the actual birth of this baby. So for those of you, maybe you just want to hear the sound if you don't want to watch the birth. But it is a beautiful birth, and she doesn't push very long. So, and it's her first baby. So enjoy.
My name is Ty. I'm 24 years old. I'm 38 and a half weeks pregnant, and I'm very excited. This is my first child.
And I'm Brian. This will be my second child. I'm 25 years old, and I'm very excited to have our baby.
To ensure that I'm in good condition for labor, good physical condition, my husband and I have been taking a lot of walks. I also stretch on my birth ball, and I do a lot of exercising of my hips. It gets a little overwhelming sometimes, the excitement. Because we've tried for so long, and we just really want her here.
The anticipation is just, it's amazing that I'm gonna have my little baby girl with me.
My labor began about 9 o'clock p.m. I was on the couch and we were watching a movie and I had a really strong contraction, so I went up and I went to the restroom and it went for a little while, but I came back out and sat on my birthing ball, and about 3 bounces later my water broke.
Ty arrives at the hospital soon after her water breaks, as instructed by her doctor.
In the beginning, I was really calm and really relaxed because I was just so relieved that it was almost over, and that she was going to be here.
At the beginning of labor, my emotions were more keeping her calm, keeping her collected, making sure that we were doing the things that we needed to do, and just keeping her relaxed as we could be.
My support team during labor was my husband Brian and my sister Lena.
It was helpful to have Ty's sister so that I could relax when I had gone to my extent of helping. I was getting pretty tired, so she'd step in and help for a while. So it was really nice having the other support person there.
Probably around 11:30, they started getting stronger. And they checked me and I was only about 2 centimeters and 50% of face, which is what I had been since 37 weeks. The tub was really helpful because, you know, my skin felt really warm, so having the warm water against it really helped to relax me and helped my muscles to not feel so much pressure.
I decided to get in the tub with my wife to help keep her relaxed and calm and see if I could maybe give her a back massage. Just be a part of the labor.
The positions I liked the best, I really liked being on my birthing ball. Walking during my contractions and then just grabbing Brian whenever during a contraction and holding on to him and having him put counter pressure on my hips. Those were probably it felt most productive and got me through it the most.
We're gonna have the baby. We're gonna have this baby.
At about 1 o'clock, they had started getting really strong. I did a lot of just deep slow breathing, because I think that for me, that really helped to kind of remind me to, you know, take the pain in and push it out at the same time. Oh, here comes a good one. During active labor, my contractions were really strong. They were really painful. It was really, really strong in my back. Everything I did, it was like I couldn't get the pressure off of my spine. It was really intense, and I was so tired, it almost overtook me. Finally, at about 5 o'clock, things had really started changing. I started having more contractions. They were stronger, they were longer, and I had them check me. And I was 3 centimeters and 90% of face. So I had not gotten very far. For what it felt like to me, I hadn't really progressed very far. I was getting really discouraged because I was so tired and in so much pain that I just felt like my body was becoming useless. And that's when I kind of turned to Brian and was like, well, should I take something to kind of just get me to kind of take the edge off to relax? And that's when we decided to figure out what our options were other than the epidural.
Ty requests an analgesic for pain relief, which is a narcotic medication that dulls the sensation of pain. The analgesic is given by injection.
And we're done. You're doing awesome. We're done.
I just felt completely relaxed, and I actually was able to close my eyes and not have to talk and not be so emotional during the whole thing, and that was the most relieving part of it.
With the relief from the analgesic, Ty is able to rest for several hours.
I just felt just kind of out of it. And when the effects started wearing off, I was more alert, more aware of what was going on. At the very end, right before she had checked me, I remember feeling a lot of pressure.
Resting seems to have helped Ty's labor progress, and by 9 a.m. she is fully dilated and feels a strong urge to push.
Like, I felt her engage with my very first push, and that was when they told me that her head was there and they could see her hair with my first push.
Push all the way to your bottom. Feel that pressure down there. That's it. Come on, Ty. Keep going. All right, catch your breath.
Everything happened really fast, so I really only pushed in one position.
Push through it. That's it, baby. Push through it. 2, 3. You can. You're awesome. You can do it. Push. 8.
The baby's head crowns after about 15 minutes of pushing.
We had Ty stop pushing for a second so the doctor could suction out the mouth of the baby.
Go on this side of Ty. Go on the other side. Go over here.
And then I moved positions and I brought the baby up on the chest and I...
Yes, I do. 9:50.
Right after she was born, Brian had brought her right up to my chest, and her nurse came up and we wiped her down, and she was wide awake. She was looking at us. There's a lot of things going on in my mind right after I had her, and it was, wow, I'm glad she's here, and wow, I'm glad I'm not pregnant anymore. I can't believe you're here. Thank you for coming. Oh. Relief, tired, and just, it was amazing.
I felt the instant bond with Lily right away.
I'm really glad that we had done skin to skin and that she was right there immediately and that she didn't have to leave me for any reason.
Bravo. Good job. Yeah. Do you still have track open?
Just having her here, it's really an awesome experience.
I've wanted a girl for quite a while now, and it was nice to finally see her.
Love for your new baby, it's just really, it's overpowering. You feel like you could do anything, you know, with that kind of love.
All right, so in that video, what she got was the equivalent of what we give is a morphine injection. It goes into the muscle and it lasts usually about 4 hours, and it will just give you this incredible sleepiness. So sometimes that's a nice option instead of an epidural, right? Just to do the morphine. We mix ours with Phenergan so that you don't have such nausea, but it really does. So anything that you get in the muscle is going to last a little bit longer. In some of the other videos, you'll see them get something through their IV, and that is fentanyl is what we use. So pre-labor possible changes. You might have your bag of water open, usually a big gush of fluid, a steady trickle. Call us and let us know the time and the color of the fluid. And at this point, we are having you come in for evaluation. And then if it is confirmed that the bag of water is opened, we'll have you stay with us. We don't necessarily right away start to augment or get your labor going. We may give it a couple hours. Some people decide they want us to get the labor going sooner rather than later, so more like an induction process. You could also have the loss of your mucus plug, so that can happen a couple weeks before you go into labor, and that's the one that's more like a meat, fat, or mucus. I haven't come up with any really non-gruesome way to describe it, but it is pretty impressive if your mucus plug comes out. No need to send us a picture. We've had a couple of them, but you don't need to. If you are concerned, call Labor and Delivery and describe what you're seeing. And then sometimes the baby drops into your pelvis. That's called lightning. And you'll feel it more. She said in her labor, she felt the baby engage right with that first push. So some people in the pregnancy will feel that baby drop down lower into the pelvis. So usually early labor, the contractions are going to be irregular. So when she took the medication, remember she was 3 centimeters, so she was still in early labor. So that really gave her a rest. And I loved how she described too, like, I was so disappointed. She was happy about the 90% effaced, but oh, I'm only 3 centimeters. So early labor, usually the contractions are irregular, maybe 30 seconds to 2 minutes long. It could be days. So just be prepared and try to ignore them and try to sleep. So you could do a unisom, the chamomile and lavender tea, those things. And keep in mind, if you lose sleep, you're not going to cope as well also. Sometimes if your labor, the early labor is lasting that 7-day mark, it's again usually because baby's not in a good position. And so that spinning babies again can help with that. Usually you're still pretty modest. You might have some clean out of your bowels happening. You might have some mucousy discharge, sometimes blood tinged. And it's really a time to take really good care of yourself, drink lots of water and eat light meals, right? And when you're planning to go to labor and delivery, it's the 5-1-1 rule. So contractions that are every 5 minutes apart. So you time it from the beginning of one to the beginning of the next. That's lasting for a minute. So from the beginning of the contraction to the end, that's going on for an hour and you can't walk or talk through those. Then it's time to come on in. Active labor, your cervix dilates at 6 to 8 centimeters, usually 3 to 10 hours. They're going to be regular, painful contractions, usually 3 to 5 minutes apart. This is a really good time to come into the hospital. It's a great time if you are planning an epidural to get an epidural. Usually you're not hungry at this point because the priority of your body is not to evacuate your digestion, right? So anything you would eat kind of stays in your tummy. So usually you're not hungry, but it is important to continue to drink water. And then the bag of water might be broken or opened by us, or it might break on its own. You may have, again, the mucus discharge and blood tinge, and it's time to really listen to your body and just that confidence that your body actually knows what to do. And then active labor tips as the contractions get stronger, your need for your support people also increases. Frequent changes in position help you stay comfortable and helps the labor process just continue. Again, the spinning babies, change positions frequently, back massage, the tennis ball, or even leaning into the wall. Verbal coaching is helpful. And your labor environment becomes even more important. So choosing your music, dimming the lights. And then the horrible, nasty bit, right? If this is the worst ever, it can't get worse, right? So it plateaus, the pain plateaus at that 8 to 10 centimeter mark. Very strong contractions. It's usually shortest, 1 to 2 hours. Again, if you're unmedicated, a little longer, it can be when you have an epidural. Lots of mucus discharge, usually blood tinged. You may be peeing frequently. You may need to sit on the toilet because you have an urge just to have a bowel movement or push down. If you have an epidural, usually you're going to feel that pressure as baby comes down too. And then the labor partner should provide undivided attention at this time and encouragement and support. So it's not time to be on the sleeping bed trying to get some rest. It's time to actually be there right at the support. You'll see in some of the videos the hip squeeze. That's a really good thing to do during transition because when you hip squeeze, you're squeezing the top of the pelvis so that the bottom can open up. And when you push, the cervix is completely dilated, it's all the way open. And then this stage ends with the birth of your baby. It usually lasts about 1 to 4 hours. This is the stage where Sunny or our other nurses would be one-on-one with you. Most of the time as a midwife, I'm in there too, unless I have other people out and about that I need to go check on. But we'll all be pushing with you. Contractions push the baby down the birth canal, and then as the baby hits the pelvic floor, it starts to do its turn. And it might cause an increased pressure, like an urge to have a bowel movement. And then as the baby's emerging from the vagina, that's when you get that ring of fire at the perineum. So pushing and birth, your nurse is one-on-one with you, or the midwife, or both. Sometimes the OB's in there too. It just depends on if there's concerns that we have. Most women will start to feel more empowered at this stage, and it actually feels good to push because you're not passive, right? They're not just washing over your body. You're using them to do something. And with an epidural, we might labor down, even though you might be completely dilated. If baby's still high, if we labor you down and we do things to open up that lower pelvis, different positions, then it might be less of a physical effort that you have to do with that epidural. And then the placenta. So I have a picture of scuba divers. That's actually my family. And once we started scuba diving, I had so much more understanding of the role of the placenta. So when I'm scuba diving, I have the regulator in my mouth and I have oxygen on my back, or nitrox, a blended oxygen that allows for me to go deeper. But the placenta is the same for your baby. You can picture like the little umbilical cord is the regulator, right? And so the placenta's role is really, really important. So that's why it's important that we give the placenta the time to let it separate. So the uterus continues to contract to deliver the placenta, usually within 5 to 60 minutes after the baby's been born. We do delayed cord clamping, so we don't clamp and cut the cord right away. We'll invite partners or moms or grandparents, support people, whoever wants to clamp or cut the cord can. And then we will offer cord blood collection if you want. We'll collect 1 vial for the baby's blood type, but we can do private banking if you want to, or more popular is the Hawaii cord blood donation, which is public banking, and we'll talk about that. And then after the placenta is delivered, you have the contractions are helping to bring your uterus smaller and put pressure on that spot where the placenta was. So you'll have a nurse massaging the top of your uterus or your fundus. We call it massage, but it's quite vigorous because we really want that uterus to trigger, to really ball up on itself. And then we might use some Pitocin for bleeding or misoprostol, Cytotec. Those things can be used to help with the bleeding also. And you'll be transferred to mother baby unit for the remainder of your stay at Kaiser, which is one of the rooms I'm in right now, usually about 2 hours after the birth. So taking your placenta home, you certainly can, although they will grow wonderful mango trees or banana trees, right? If you put the placenta underneath a tree. However, ingesting your placenta is not medically indicated. I love the idea of it, but if you think of other mammals, they also eat their placentas, but it's not for nutrition, it's for safety. Because if a placenta of a newborn is left out in the open, then a wolf or a predator is going to know that there's a newborn baby around, right? So that's more the reason why wild mammals or non-human mammals ingest their placenta, is to cover the tracks of a newborn baby. And we don't really have that. There's nobody that's going to come in here to find the newborn baby, right? So if you want, most of the people that take it home will bury it. The encapsulation is a very expensive process, and sometimes you can trigger blood pressure issues, like if somebody's had preeclampsia in their labor process and they ingest the placenta in the capsule form, they may then increase their blood pressure, because we think preeclampsia has something to do with the placenta. So in ingesting that placenta, it can spike the blood pressure. There have been people that have gotten groupie strep from ingesting the placenta. Groupie strep is a bacteria that lives in the vagina. 30% of us have it in our vaginas. Doesn't cause us any problems, but a newborn baby, it can cause sepsis and illness. So we test for it at 37 weeks, and we treat it with penicillin in labor. So that's one of those things where they found it in the encapsulated placenta. And if you think of the placenta like the way it's stopping COVID to get to babies, but then it's causing a little interruption to the placenta, they're not as hardy. Then, with flu, RSV, and those viruses too, I would not want you to ingest the placenta, just in case those things are lurking there still. So that's our kind of 2 cents on the trend of the placenta encapsulation. So